Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we crack open the design, the real engineering behind the gear that genuinely changes things. And today, we are focusing on this pretty modest-looking stomp box that, quietly became a massive deal for bass players.
A real pivot point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For anyone wanting that professional, studio-quality tone, whether they're on a massive stage or just, plugging into an interface.
And that's the BOSS BB1X bass driver.
That's the one. It landed back in 2015, but its impact, you still feel it today, especially with session players.
It's the perfect subject for this because it's this amazing convergence of digital tech and just real-world practical needs.
Right.
On the surface, yeah, it's a pedal. But what it really is a full-on bass preamp, an overdrive, and a DI enhancer all in one. It's meant to be the heart of a modern bass rig.
And the reason BSS even built this thing was to solve that ancient, super frustrating problem, the muddy drive dilemma.
Oh, every bass player knows it.
You know the drill, right? You want that grit, that awesome texture, but the second you kick on a traditional overdrive, what happens? Your low end, the very thing holding the song together, just collapses.
It just turns into this thin, fuzzy mess.
Yeah.
And that was the mission of the BB1X, to give you all that high gain drive, all those rich harmonics, but without sacrificing the fundamental.
Without losing the foundation.
Precisely. So we're going to get into how it pulls this off with its proprietary digital technology to give you this finished, mix-ready sound that honestly often means you don't need any other EQ.
Okay, so let's unpack this core innovation.
Yeah.
I think we have to start with the concept that makes this thing just fundamentally different from, any bass distortion that came before.
Right.
We've said it's not just an overdrive. It's engineered to be a studio-grade dynamic tone shaper.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. The heart of the BB1X, the tech, is what BOS calls multi-dimensional processing.
Yep.
MBP, yeah. And this is not a static analog circuit. It's not even just a simple digital copy of one. It is a dedicated, fully digital processing engine that's actively listening to what you play.
It's listening. So if it's multi-dimensional, what's it actually processing separately? What's going on under the hood?
Okay, so this is where the magic happens. Think of MDP as a really smart multi-band processor. It dynamically splits your bass signal into several different frequency bands.
Like lows, mids, highs, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Lows, low mids, high mids, highs. And then, and this is the key, it applies separate dynamic controls to each of those bands.
Okay, give me an example. If I'm playing some heavy rock riff, what's happening to my lowest notes versus, say, the attack of the note?
So with a traditional analog drive pedal, you crank the gain and it just saturates everything.
Yeah, the whole signal gets clipped.
The whole signal, which causes those big, long, low-frequency waves to just sort of fold in on themselves. That's where you get the mud. The BB1X completely avoids this. It uses what's called adaptive clipping. So the low frequencies, they might just get some dynamic compression, some tightening, while the actual aggressive distortion is only applied to the mid and high frequencies.
Whoa, that's fascinating. So the processor is actually smart enough to know that, say, my low E string needs to be stable and heavy, not mushy.
Yes.
But the higher stuff needs that aggressive grit to cut through a mix.
Exactly.
Okay, but if it's a digital engine, doesn't that risk sounding sterile? That was the big problem with early digital bass pedals.
Yeah.
How does it get that amp-like grit without sounding thin?
That's the challenge. And the brilliance of the algorithm is how it generates those harmonics. It's designed to enrich the upper harmonics in this very specific nonlinear way.
So it's mimicking a tube amp's response.
It's mimicking how a high-quality tube amp responds dynamically to how you play, yeah. Not just slapping on a blanket layer of distortion. It wants to add punch and clarity everywhere and make sure that overdrive preserves your note definition.
And for BOSS, historically, this was a massive step.
Oh, huge. The BB1X was the first dedicated bass pedal they ever made with MDP. It basically repositioned their bass effects from, simple stomp boxes
to these compact studio preamps.
Yes. It bridged the gap between a traditional pedal and a high-end rack unit.
Okay, so let's shift to the controls on the front. If the tech is that complex, this dynamic, multi-band, adaptive thing, how on earth does BISS hide all that behind just 5 simple-looking knobs?
Well, this is why people call it a sound engineer in a box. The 5 controls are level, blend, low, high, and drive.
Standard stuff looks like.
Looks standard, but because of MDP, each knob is actually multifunctional and really interactive.
So it's not just a simple treble and bass EQ shelf.
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
And that's the crucial detail you have to get. Turning the low knob doesn't just, boost the volume at 80 hertz.
What's it doing then?
It's telling the MDP to dynamically adjust the compression and the attack presence in those low frequencies. So if you turn up the low knob, especially with the drive cranked, you don't get boominess.
Get tightness.
You get a feeling of more tightness and fundamental stability. It's really clever.
Let's zero in on the blend control. I feel like for bass, that's everything.
The blend is essential, yeah.
Yeah.
It's managing your dry signal versus the wet MDP process signal.
So you can keep your clean tone underneath.
Exactly. It lets you keep that full, clean, uncompressed body of your bass. And then you just precisely dial in that harmonically rich driven signal right on top of it.
Which means even at high drive, you still feel the punch of the original note.
You feel the fundamentals.
And the high control, is that just treble?
No, it's more about the character of the top end. It moves you from this smooth, polished treble response.
Good for vintage sounds, maybe?
Yeah, warmer tones. And it moves you all the way to this sharper, more biting character that makes sure your attack just slices through the mix. It's articulation, not just volume.
Okay, now here's where this pedal becomes like a must-have for live and studio players. The outputs. We have to talk about that dedicated line out.
Yes. For a lot of players, the line out is the whole reason they buy this pedal. It's totally separate from the normal instrument level output and has this feature called speaker compensated voicing.
Okay, break that down. Speaker compensated. What does that actually mean for the sound you hear?
It means a pedal has a virtual cabinet emulation built right in.
Okay.
See, when you run a driven bass signal straight into a mixing board, it sounds awful. It's harsh and brittle because there's no speaker cone filtering those high frequencies.
Right, it's that fizzy sound.
The BB1X's line out applies this really crucial high frequency roll-off. It's simulating the sound of a perfectly mic'd bass cab.
So it's designed specifically for going direct, for feeding the front of house PA system. It gives the sound engineer a signal that barely needs to be touched. All the dynamics, the EQ, the cab sound, it's all baked in. It's a preamp and a DI in one box. So we know the architecture is brilliant, but let's talk about the sound. What is that signature tone that makes this thing so loved by session players who need consistency night after night?
Well, the core tone is just clean, punchy, and really wide frequency. It's known for this super solid, anchored, low end.
Doesn't get lost?
Never. Transparent, but really present mids, so you don't get that mid-scoop problem. And then this beautiful, almost crystalline high-end definition.
So you get that amp-like grit, but you don't lose the clarity.
Exactly. The note definition stays totally intact. It's why so many people just use it as an always-on pedal, because it just makes your bass tone better, even when it's set almost completely clean.
Okay, let's make this real for people. Walk us through how the sound changes as you sweep the blend and the drive knobs.
Okay, let's start with blend. If you keep the blend knob low, so you're mostly hearing your dry signal, the BB1X is basically a foundational tone sweetener, a preamp. You get more clarity, a tighter low end, and this just pleasant dynamic feel. It's perfect for pop or jazz.
What if you bring it up to noon, like a 50-50 mix?
That's where you find that modern, clean sweet spot. You get the full body of your dry signal, but then you're adding all that harmonic richness from the MDP on top.
So that would be great for funk or worship music.
Fantastic for it. Anywhere the bass needs to be defined, loud, and really crisp.
And then if we push the blend all the way up, mostly effects signal.
That's where you find the aggression. You're in highly driven territory now. Growling mids, tight punch. It just guarantees your bass will cut through a wall of guitars.
Perfect for rock.
Rock, metal, anything heavy.
Okay, now let's test that drive knob.
Oh.
This is the moment of truth, right? This is where other drives just fall apart on the low end.
Right. So with the drive set low, you're just adding these subtle harmonic complexities. You're tightening the attack, but there's no audible distortion.
Good for fingerstyle or slap, maybe?
Excellent for that. Gives it presence without getting fuzzy.
Yeah.
But as you push the drive higher, you get this heavy, modern overdrive. Great for playing with a pick in rock or metal.
And here is the absolute key takeaway for you listening. Thanks to that adaptive MDP thing, even when the drive is totally maxed out,
the pedal never, ever loses that fundamental low-end presence.
the subs are protected.
That is the essential selling point. You get all the texture of distortion, but the low frequencies stay dynamically controlled, anchored. no mud.
And this functionality, it just lends itself to so many different real-world uses. It sounds like one pedal is really covering 4 different jobs.
It really is. First, like we said, it's an always-on tone enhancer. It's like having a channel strip from a high-end studio console.
Right. And second, it could be your primary bass preamp.
Yeah, letting players just skip their amp entirely and run that line out straight to the board or an interface.
What about for the players who need that high gain on stage?
Well, it's a killer rock and metal bass drive. It guarantees your bass will cut through distorted guitars without getting washed out. And finally, for studio recording,
The combination of the 2 outputs, the cab sim, the low noise.
it means you capture this incredibly professional tone that needs almost no fixing in the mix. Okay, so let's try and synthesize all this. The DB1X is, it's a digital success story, but that approach always comes with trade-offs. We should probably explore those to give the full picture.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start with the overwhelming pros, based on everything we've talked about.
Well, the consensus is pretty clear. It's one of the cleanest, most mix-ready preamps you can get in a little box.
And the low end stays tight, even under crazy amounts of drive.
It never collapses. And the EQ is just so musical, it is genuinely hard to dial in a bad sound. The articulation you get from MDP is just unmatched at this price point.
Plus, it handles active and passive basses equally well, which says a lot about its input state.
Absolutely. But we do need to talk about the analog purists.
Right.
If you are looking for that messy, chaotic, lo-fi, vintage breakup, the sound of a tube amp that's about to explode.
The BB1X is going to feel way too polite.
Way too polite. It's built for clarity, not for chaos.
How would you contrast its feel with, say, an analog classic, like a Sansamp or an Aguilar tone hammer?
That is an excellent question. Analog preamps like those, they often have a very specific baked-in character, a color.
Right, they're emulating a specific vintage amp.
Yeah. The BB1X is different. Its color is clean, high fidelity, modern. It sounds like a beautifully recorded bass going through a pristine modern console.
Whereas the others sound like a beautifully recorded amp.
That's a perfect way to put it. Even at high gain, the BB1X keeps this polished, controlled character. Every single note stays defined. It will always prioritize articulation over, just raw saturation.
And that leads to the crucial point, right? The double-edged sword of having that much clarity. Because it's so articulate, it has this side effect that might surprise some people.
Yes. That articulation, it exposes sloppy technique ruthlessly. The NDP processes exactly what you feed it. It refuses to mask your mistakes. So if you have an uneven attack, bad muting, a little fret buzz, the BB1X will perfectly preserve and broadcast that mistake with crystal clarity.
So it's humbling, but maybe helpful in the long run.
Very revealing.
So the final summary is that this pedal was designed to solve the physical limits of analog drive by using a digital brain. And it gave bass players this modern, powerful, and compact tool for both drive and clarity.
Yeah.
It totally succeeded by redefining what a bass preamp could even do.
It's still a benchmark for digital tone shaping. It proves that when digital processing is done intelligently, like with MDP, it can give you a richness and punch that, surpasses a lot of analog's old constraints.
So if the BB1X uses its multidimensional processing to make sure that power and clarity always coexist in your tone, we have to leave you with this final provocative thought. Building on that whole articulation trade-off. If a piece of gear is so focused on delivering perfect dynamic clarity that it instantly exposes all your technical flaws, does relying on tech like this actually force us to become better players? Do we end up using gear not just as a tone tool, but as a rigorous, maybe even unforgiving practice tool?
Think about what your gear is revealing about your hands. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.